The sun hung low over the small town, casting a warm amber glow across the fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. The day was quiet, but there was something in the air, a sense of anticipation that hummed through the wind. The town had always been peaceful, nestled in the heart of the valley, surrounded by tall, swaying grass and rolling hills. It was a place where the stories of the past lived on, and people went about their days without much disruption. In the midst of this tranquil landscape, there stood a small cottage at the edge of the woods, where the trees grew thick and dense. The elderly woman, Evelyn, sat outside on her porch, wrapped in a soft blanket. She had lived in this house for as long as she could remember, but in recent years, her body had become frail, her legs unable to carry her like they once had. She was confined to a wheelchair, but her mind was sharp, and her heart still longed for the days of adventure when she used to roam the fields with the wild horses. Her gaze often wandered toward the woods, where the mustangs roamed free, a sight she had always admired. There was one in particular, a powerful chestnut stallion with a mane that shimmered like gold in the sun. It had become a local legend, known for its untamed spirit and beauty. Yet the Mustang had never come near the town or its people. It was a ghost of the wild, a creature that belonged to the mountains, untouched by human hands. But today, something was different. As Evelyn gazed across the fields, her heart skipped a beat. She saw movement in the distance, a shape emerging from the woods, a wild horse. She could hardly believe her eyes as the magnificent Mustang approached the edge of the forest. It moved with purpose, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its chestnut coat. The Mustang's eyes locked onto Evelyn's, and for a moment, everything around her seemed to fade away. The connection between the two was palpable, as if the horse knew exactly who she was. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Could it be? Was this the wild Mustang she had only ever dreamed of seeing up close? Her hands trembled slightly, but she reached for the wheels of her chair and turned to face the oncoming creature. What would happen now? Would the horse keep its distance, or would it come closer? As the Mustang drew closer, Evelyn's heart began to race. Her hands, which had once been so steady, now trembled with a mix of excitement and disbelief. The horse's large, dark eyes seemed to lock onto hers, and for a moment the world around them fell silent. The wind stopped rustling through the trees, the birds ceased their calls, and even the distant sounds of the town seemed to fade away. It was as if time itself had paused, giving them this fleeting moment of connection. The Mustang's steps were slow and deliberate as it crossed the open field toward Evelyn. Each step seemed calculated, as though the horse knew exactly where it was headed. The rhythmic thumping of its hooves echoed through the quiet air, growing louder as it approached. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the horse came closer, its head held high and proud. She could see the powerful muscles in its body flex with each step, and its mane, wild and untamed, fluttered in the breeze like the wings of a bird in flight. The Mustang's coat glistened in the sunlight, its chestnut hue glowing with an almost otherworldly light. It was a creature of the wild, free, untamed and majestic. As the horse stopped a few feet in front of her, Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. It stood there still and calm, as if it had been waiting for this very moment. Its eyes never left hers, and Evelyn felt a wave of warmth and connection wash over her. There was something about the horse, something deep and unspoken, that made her feel both alive and at peace all at once. The Mustang's nostrils flared as it sniffed the air, its powerful presence radiating a quiet strength. Evelyn's fingers itched to reach out and touch it, but she hesitated, unsure of how the wild animal might react. Yet there was no fear in the horse's gaze. It stood there, watching her with a calm and knowing look, as if waiting for her to make the next move. After a few moments of silent exchange, Evelyn slowly extended a hand, her fingers trembling slightly. To her surprise, the Mustang took a step closer, its warm breath brushing against her fingers. Evelyn could feel the soft exhale of the horse, and in that moment, she knew that something extraordinary was happening. This was no ordinary encounter. It was a meeting of two souls, two beings that had somehow found each other in the vastness of the wilderness. The Mustang's eyes softened, and it gently nudged her hand with its nose, almost as if to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." Evelyn's heart swelled with emotion, and for the first time in years she felt truly alive, as though the weight of her years had lifted, if only for a moment. Evelyn's hand rested gently on the Mustang's warm, velvety muzzle. A shiver ran down her spine as the horse's eyes locked with hers once again, its gaze deep and understanding. In that fleeting moment, she could feel the strength of its spirit, its untamed soul, and the wild freedom that coursed through its veins. The Mustang's warmth seemed to reach her in a way that words never could. She felt an overwhelming connection, as if this was where she was always meant to be, with this magnificent creature by her side. For the first time in years, the aches and pains of age seemed to melt away. Evelyn was no longer a frail, elderly woman confined to a wheelchair. In the presence of this wild, free animal, she felt young again, alive in ways she hadn't felt for decades. The Mustang, a creature of strength and resilience, had somehow sparked something deep within her. She slowly leaned forward, her hand moving to the horse's mane, fingers brushing through the thick strands of gold and chestnut. As she touched the horse, a sense of peace washed over her, like the Mustang was offering its strength to her. Evelyn's heart filled with a quiet joy that she hadn't known in years. But as she reached for her wheelchair's wheels to turn and head back inside, something extraordinary happened. The Mustang took a step forward, its large hooves digging into the earth, and nudged Evelyn's wheelchair with its head. The gentle push was surprising, but it was clear that the horse was trying to get her attention, urging her to stay. Evelyn looked up in wonder, not sure what the horse was trying to tell her, but feeling a strange sense of purpose wash over her. There was something in the air now, a change that felt almost magical. The Mustang slowly circled around her wheelchair, its presence steady and calming, as though guiding her. Evelyn's heart pounded with anticipation. Was this a sign? Was the horse trying to help her somehow? Could it be possible that this wild creature, so free and untamed, had somehow sensed her longing for something more? Before she could ponder further, the Mustang stopped in front of her, its head tilted slightly to one side, as if waiting for her to make the next move. Evelyn swallowed the lump in her throat, looking down at the horse with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Could it be? Could this horse, this untamed wild Mustang, actually help her walk again? With trembling hands, Evelyn reached down and gripped the sides of her wheelchair, her gaze never leaving the Mustang. The horse stepped back slightly, as though giving her space. Evelyn could feel the connection between them deepen, the energy in the air shifting as if the Mustang was telling her, "You're not alone anymore." In a moment of sheer determination, Evelyn pulled herself from the wheelchair, her legs shaking as she stood. She hadn't stood in years, hadn't even tried, afraid of falling and hurting herself. But in that moment, with the Mustang standing in front of her, the impossible felt within reach. She steadied herself with the chair for a moment, her heart racing, her legs weak but eager. And then, slowly, carefully, she took a step forward. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she took that first step. It was shaky, uncertain, but it was a step, one she hadn't taken in years. Her legs trembled under the weight of her body, but something powerful coursed through her veins. The Mustang, standing quietly in front of her, watched with an intensity that seemed to give her strength, as if it was urging her on. The energy between them felt like a bond of pure trust, a silent promise that she could do it. For a moment, time seemed to stretch out. Evelyn's body ached, every muscle protesting the unfamiliar motion, but her heart swelled with an overwhelming sense of possibility. The Mustang, ever watchful, nudged the edge of the wheelchair as if to say, "Don't look back, keep going." With a shaky breath, Evelyn took another step and then another. The second step was a little steadier, the third a little more confident. The fear that had gripped her for years, the fear that her legs would never support her, that her age had stolen her independence, began to fade. The Mustang's presence, the wild spirit that exuded from it, seemed to infuse her with a courage she hadn't known in decades. The world around her became distant, and in its place was a sense of pure focus, a moment of miraculous connection. She reached out for the fence post, her hands gripping it tightly, her chest heaving from the exertion. She paused there, standing, breathing, her heart racing with exhilaration. It wasn't just the physical act of standing, it was something deeper, something that spoke to her soul. This horse, this wild creature, had given her the strength she had long forgotten she had. The Mustang, sensing her triumph, moved closer, its head lowering in what seemed like recognition. Evelyn slowly turned to face it, tears welling in her eyes. She had been given something no doctor could have promised, no therapy could have guaranteed. It wasn't just about the steps she had taken, it was about what had happened in her heart. She had found a sense of freedom again, a new sense of hope. For a moment, she wasn't just an elderly woman in a wheelchair. She was a woman who had stood, defied the odds, and embraced the wild spirit of the Mustang. The bond between them, though silent, spoke louder than any words could. The Mustang took a step toward her, nudging her gently with its nose, as if acknowledging the achievement. Evelyn reached out, her hand trembling as she placed it on the horse's neck, feeling the warmth of its coat beneath her fingers. She couldn't help but laugh softly, the tears in her eyes mixing with the joy that overwhelmed her. As Evelyn stood there, her hand resting on the Mustang's neck, a profound sense of peace washed over her. The wild horse, once a distant legend in her mind, had become an unexpected companion. The way it had approached her, the way it had stayed with her during her moments of fear and doubt, felt like a silent promise that she wasn't alone. And now, as she stood with the horse, something more than just a physical miracle had taken place. Her legs, though weak, had found new strength, but it was her heart that had truly been restored. The Mustang's quiet presence had awakened something deep within her, a memory of a time when she had roamed the fields free and untethered, a time when she had danced with the wind, when the world had felt limitless. For so long, those memories had felt distant, locked away in the vault of her past. But now, in the presence of this majestic creature, those memories seemed to come alive once more. Evelyn took a deep breath, her lungs filling with the fresh, crisp air. She took another step, and then another, this time with more confidence. The Mustang walked beside her, its gentle steps matching her pace. There was no rush, no urgency, only a quiet, shared understanding. They were both, in a way, rediscovering their freedom. Evelyn paused and looked down at the Mustang, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The Mustang turned its head to her, its dark eyes meeting hers, and in that gaze, Evelyn could see something that transcended words. It was as if the horse understood the depth of her gratitude, understood the unspoken bond that had formed between them in such a short time. With the sun setting in the distance, casting a golden glow over the land, Evelyn knew this moment would stay with her forever. She had never imagined that a wild Mustang would enter her life, let alone change it in such a profound way. And yet, here they were, standing together at the edge of the wilderness, a woman and a horse, both having found something they hadn't even known they were looking for. The Mustang took a step forward, gently nudging Evelyn's side, as if inviting her to continue walking with it. With a smile, Evelyn nodded. She didn't need to say anything more. She knew that from this day forward, her life would be different. As she walked alongside the Mustang, each step more confident than the last, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years, alive, truly alive, in a way that only the wild could make you feel. And with that, she took one more step into a new chapter of her life, one filled with freedom, hope, and the unbreakable bond she had formed with the creature that had reminded her that miracles, sometimes, happen in the most unexpected ways.